Hey everybody, Beardo Dude here with another installment in our save file editing series for Stoneshard. Today we'll be looking at the way forward update and the changes that have been made to the save file. We'll start with the basics of the tool set that you'll need. Then we'll dig into the changes from reputation, how you can alter dungeons, how you can clone items and equipment, also changing the color of the scrolls, and we'll also look at a means for character transfer from previous versions to the way forward update. So stay tuned. But first, let's talk about this video's sponsor, Ares Game. Ares Game is a new hardware manufacturer focusing primarily on power supply units and CPU cooling. I recently acquired the AG750 750 watt bronze modular power supply. They currently sell power supplies ranging from 500 watt to 750 watt with an 850 watt on the way. The unit comes with a manual AC power cord, 4 cable ties, 4 screws, modular cables, and the power supply unit itself. The unit also comes with a quick inspection tool to make sure your power supply is functional before installing it in your computer. This model provides a modular design for custom cable configurations. It is also equipped with a 120mm hydraulic bearing silent fan to help dissipate the heat under heavy loads while maintaining a quiet performance. Ares Game product features stable power. The AG750 has outstanding electrical performance with an ultra stable voltage and extremely clean power output, and is 80+ bronze certified. They also provide top quality protections. The unit is also covered by a 5-year warranty and Ares Games legendary customer service and support. I have provided links to their store on Amazon as well as their website. Now on to the video. Disclaimer. Editing your save file is highly discouraged by the development team for Stoneshard, and they will not be held responsible if your game saves become corrupted by following my guide. Additionally, make sure to follow the steps and advice in my video to ensure smooth changes without any problems. Editing the save file can be tricky, especially if you're not familiar with programming, so take that under advisement. I also want to add that I did get the blessings from the development team to make this video. They feel that since so many people are already editing their save files, that it's not a big deal to actually provide a tutorial on how to do so, especially to spice things up in the game as we wait for further development. This guide is compatible with version 0.6.0.17 in the way forward update. This is obviously subject to change in subsequent updates, so keep that in mind. Additionally, if any of you have any questions about what's in the video, or if you're getting errors, if you're having issues following the guide, feel free to reach out to me on Discord by the same name, Beardo Dude. I actively participate on the Stoneshard Discord, so you should be able to find me there. So on to the video. So to get started, you're going to want to make sure that you have the proper tools installed to edit the save file. One popular one that I use is called NotePad++. I will leave a link in the description, but you can easily find it by just doing a quick Google search. Click on the download section, just get the most recent one. And then depending on what kind of operating system that you're using, if you're 64-bit or 32-bit, usually you're going to be 64-bit. You can check this by typing the dxdiag into your run, into the run section down here, and it should be able to tell you exactly what you're using. So I mean, just do the normal, just go through all the normal motions of installing it. I actually wiped it and I'm doing a fresh install to show you guys. Using Notepad++, you can easily undo any changes if you do break something. That's why it's nice to use compared to traditional Notepad, as traditional Notepad will only save one change. So you can only undo one step, whereas Notepad++, you can save it, switch it back, undo the changes, save it again. It's a very nice tool to use. So once you have Notepad++ installed, go to the plugins section, go to plugins admin, and add an extension called JSON Viewer. You can click on it, tell it to install, just tell it, yeah, it's gonna run. And the reason you want to do this is because the save file is in what's called JSON. That's stands for JavaScript Object Notation. You don't really need to know too much about it, other than this is a very popular way to store data compared to traditional, heavy access databases and stuff. You can just have it in a simple file, and it has a very easy to read format. So now, once you have these tools set up, the next step is going to be backing up your save file folder. And the reason you want to do this is just on the off chance you make any heavy changes and you end up breaking the game, meaning when you try to load your files, the game is going to give you an error. You'll be able to easily replace it and go back to normal. Especially if you're going to be bold enough to make these changes on a character that you are already playing with, which I don't advise. I almost would prefer if you guys would start a new character. So you'll want to go to your Windows Explorer, type in AppData in between the two percentage signs, and this will bring up your AppData folder. Typically it will send you to roaming, so just back out, go to local, then just go down until you find Stoneshard. This is where all of your save data is being stored. As you can see, if you click on the characters folder, which we're going to be using to make all the changes, this is where all your save files are stored for each character. You don't have to worry about or mess with any of these. You can just leave them alone. But what I would advise is just making a copy of this, and even just as simply as pasting it on your desktop. Call it something like Stoneshard Backups. When you're going, if you do need to restore it, make sure you get rid of the backups, drag it over here, and it'll overwrite everything, and you should be good to go. Part 1, Scroll Colors. While not a game-changing edit, I have gotten asked about changing the color of the scrolls. This is one of the few things that are super easy to change, but rather complicated in execution. The different colors are designated by a number from 0 to 15. The different color scrolls are on screen for reference. So as demonstration, I figured I would show you on one of my old Jorgrim characters. And we're at the church in Manchester just because we can see all three very easily. If you make these changes, they will not take effect if you have scrolls in your inventory already. They only seem to change if you're purchasing new scrolls, either from Josh here in the church, or the identification and disenchantment scrolls from Frid in Osbrook, as well as, if you pick them up while running dungeons. So, in order from the number array, which I'll show you in a moment, the first is the identification scroll, then it's enchantment scroll, and then it's disenchantment scroll. So going off the reference picture on screen, which I'll flash again, in this demonstration we will change the ID scrolls to the red that shows 3.0. Enchantment scrolls will change to 8.0, which is the yellow on yellow. And for disenchantment, we will change these to purple, which is 13 by 0. So to do this, you'll need to open your character save, as I've shown in the past. And you're going to go make sure that you have the JSON viewer installed, as stated earlier. Go to show JSON viewer, wait for it to load for a second, and then you'll find the scroll information in the section here called scrolls. So you'll see there's a number 0 to 15, so there's 16 numbers here. This 0 is going to be the ID scroll, 1 is going to be the enchantment scroll, and 2 is going to be the disenchantment scroll, which you can see that all of the colors are matched as I described. So we have number 1 for the disenchantment, number 0 for enchantment, and number 10 for ID. So all you'll do is hit Control F, then search for scrolls, which will take you right there. Scroll slightly to the right so you can see 10, 0, and 1, which matches what we just discussed. Double check. Yep. So, as I stated, we'll change the first scroll to 3, and usually what I'll do, let me expand it a little bit here. Wherever 3 was, I'll just go replace those. I'm not sure. I imagine that these other color placeholders might be for other scrolls in the future, but for right now, I'm not entirely sure what their like general purpose is going to be. So 8 will change to 0, and the last one we will change to 13, which 13 must be all the way, there we go. So we'll change 13 to 1, hit save, then reload. So now you can see all of the colors have changed as I pretty much outlined. So ID scrolls are now red 3.0. The enchantment scrolls are now yellow, the 8.0, and disenchantment are now the purple 13.0, you know, the purple with the red seal on there. So like I said, this isn't a huge change, but it is something if you'd like to kind of keep, you know, consistency with your scroll colors across save files, or just choose colors you really like. Part 2, dungeon changes. While there is not a lot that you can do to change the dungeons, there are a few settings for each randomly selected dungeon. Sadly, this does not include forcing secret rooms to appear. If you'd like to expand the number of floors on the dungeon, you will need to figure out which dungeon you want to change first. I would suggest looking on your map for the names of the dungeons. So, for instance, if we were going to go run the Gloomy Crypt here, let me pull up the save file. First, what you could do is, obviously, we're running a new character, so show JSON viewer will give you a nice look at everything going on here. The changes you will be making is in the dungeon section. What you could do is, now that we know Gloomy Crypt, you can expand each of these to look for the dungeon name, which will appear as the second variable. So seeing as this is one of the last ones, we'll check these last 3, and there we go, Gloomy Crypt. So what I typically do, you'll want to change this variable here, dungeon_LVL. This determines how many floors are on the dungeon. What I'll typically do is I'll note the dungeon ID number, so we are looking for dungeon 146, and I'll actually just search for the property dungeon level, and as you move, you'll see the number is right next to it. So dungeon level, that's not the one we want. It's scooted over there, 63, 31, 15, 146. So this is the dungeon that we actually want to change. So all you got to do is just change this variable. Typically, I would suggest keeping it at a low number, though there really is no holds bar. The main thing that I noticed, at least in the previous version, is that as you add more levels or more floors to the dungeon, you will start to notice performance problems, and I'm guessing this is because the game has to keep track of every floor, all the objects. You know, if you're breaking barrels, like each of the little shards that you break. So if you go crazy and go 20, you might have performance issues. The main reason I like to do this, and I don't typically do it on my normal Let's Plays, sometimes I will, especially on the last episode, we might go ahead and do 10 floors, you know, an all or nothing type run. You can definitely do this. So all you do is save, reload, then go take the quest. Now, I'm not 100% sure exactly when it triggers. I think as long as you change it before you take the quest, or at least before you actually go inside the dungeon, that these settings will hold. So if we went over here, I don't know. Oh, okay, so we do have lost relics, so we could go run Gloomy Crypt. And it would have 10 floors in it, which would probably, you know, kill us, as long as we would need to have adequate supplies. So a couple water skins and plenty of food, especially if the crypts don't have any food in them. The other thing that I discovered that you can change, though it's not as clear or as straightforward as it may seem, are the mob LVL min and mob LVL max. Basically, this sets the minimum and maximum levels of the different mobs that will spawn, or enemies that will spawn in the dungeons. So theoretically, you could raise this much higher. I tested and did 15 and 15, and the dungeon was empty, so I do not recommend doing 15 and 15. I think 15 might be left only for the bosses. Possibly in the crypts it would be for super high level enemies, like the in-game kind of Skelebros that you run into. But you can definitely do like 12 and 15. The only issue here is that by setting it low to 5, that means that zombies and low-level skeleton enemies, ghouls, things like that will spawn in the dungeon. There seems to be something to do with how the algorithm builds the dungeon and populates it with enemies, that it will not simply, like, if a floor is going to have 10 enemies, there's some kind of distribution in that. If you don't have, you know, the range being 5 to 15, then it'll only spawn like 3 high level enemies instead of spawning 10, where the other 7 are, you know, zombies or ghouls or gas or whatever. So it is something to keep in mind. And like I said, I use the same kind of idea. You can use the dungeon level as a search, because it basically brings you over here anyways. Because the mob level min is right next to dungeon ID. So you could change that to 12. If you wanted to make the dungeons easier for some reason, I suppose you could drop this. I'm not sure if it would have negative consequences as far as spawning the boss or not. But this is one other thing that you can go in, and I have tested a little bit. So you can definitely change these and play around with it. You know, just as another fun way to increase the difficulty of the dungeons and just have some means of control, you know, as we're waiting for more content. Part 3, Reputation. So after the latest reputation hotfix that came after the Way Forward update, there have been a few major changes to how reputation is tracked in the save file. It was a big enough change that I actually trimmed my old video, so there is no longer a reputation section in there. I wanted to update everyone on how you could go about and fool around with it. Yeah, so you can see here with Arna, we have Osbrook's at Amity level. Manshire, we're already full respect, maxed out. We get all the goodies. But with Osbrook, we are not quite there yet. So if I pull up Arna's save file, which we already have open and loaded, the section of code that you're looking for is called locations. And basically the two that you're looking for are Manshire and Osbrook. And so in Manshire, as I showed you, my reputation was quite high. There's basically 3 variables you have to change now. Reputation tier progress, and reputation itself, like we used to previously. So there are 2 more variables that need to be changed. So if we pull up Osbrook, we'll see the same. Reputation tier progress is 33%. We are at Amity level. Reputation's 3250. So still had a ways to go in Osbrook to get respect level. So you can search Osbrook as the starting point here. And you can tell that you are where you need to be because the next field is going to be Tavern Reward. Then what you can type in is the next one, which you'll want to get to, which is Reputation Tier. And it will slide over so we can see it says Amity. Now you essentially just change it to what you want it to be. Most cases you're going to want to change it to Respect. It's not much other reason to be changing this unless that's basically what you're going for. So once we change this to Respect, you'll want to type in the next one, which is Reputation Tier Progress. As you can see here, that will take us over, and you can see the value matches what we see in the JSON viewer. So you'll just change this to 100, and then make sure you have 6 decimals for the number here. Then the last bit that you'll change is just the word reputation. So again, make sure you're using the double quotes so you get exactly where you want. And as you can see, we are back here. So just change this to 5,000. Hit save. Now, when we load Arna, she will now be respected in Osbrook, as you can see, and all of the benefits are afforded to her. Better gear, favorable prices, weapon wide selection. All of these will be triggered and you'll be able to use them in their respective towns. Part 4. Item and equipment cloning. Another major change with Way Forward is that we lost a lot of visibility into the different types of equipment and a lot of enemy stats and things like that, as the developers have now put the old CSV files that I alluded to in earlier videos into the code, essentially making them unavailable unless you want to go as far as to run some kind of program that would let you see the game in memory and you could try to read the data there. There's basically no way to just copy and paste fields from the CSV files or change variables like we had to get access to some of the unique items. One thing that we can do, and something that I sort of alluded to but not really in the original videos, is we can simply clone these items into a container or into our inventory. So if you are wanting to clone an item, there's basically 2 ways you can do it. Number 1, you can look at items that the merchants already have. Secondly, I have left a pastebin file, or link to a pastebin file in the description with a number of unique and rare items that I have collected on this B-roll character for you to copy and paste into your own file if you do want to get access to equipment that is not available in the game. So first, if you want to just clone a piece of equipment that a vendor has, we can go and look for something simple like the Elven Kalkin. So basically, you'll just need to copy this whole section from the opening bracket until you see close bracket like this, which will usually end in O, inventory left hand. So we'll slide over, And that inventory left hand will usually be preceded by a few different numbers, which are actually very important to this process. So, copy and paste. Well, copy. The thing to keep in mind is that a number of these variables actually do play a role in this whole process and can basically crash the game if you do not change them. So what we can do is go to our inventory and yep, here we go. So we can just dump it in right here, and it did the comma and everything, so we're good to go. Firstly, we will need to change these. I have a string to copy and paste, which will basically dump it into the top slot of your inventory. It seems these numbers have something to do with position in inventory. So if you pull this from a shopkeep, they obviously have much larger inventory than we do, so that can break. So the main fields that need to change are these dimensions that I showed you. So I did just copy and paste this whole area and this whole section of text. So we do that, save, load the game, and boom. Now we have a Nomad Calcan in here. Like I said, not exactly the most ideal way to do it, as that you will be limited to items that are only available for merchants. So another way to do this, and I will have basically a copy and paste way to do this for you guys, is, let's say, for instance, on Derwin here, we have the pig-faced bassinet. Pretty nice. Definitely not something you will easily find. I think you can only actually get this from the crypts now. So you could essentially clone items as well. So if we type in, oops, pig face. No? Is that not? Oh, pig dash face. Of course, how silly of me. There we go. So the same idea. You want to go to the beginning. It looks like this one is actually not the same as the ID. Oh yeah, it's one word, pig-faced. So we'll roll on back to the beginning here. There we go. So yeah, it was one word. So yeah, and it's actually in the beginning of our inventory here. So we will copy and paste this. Like I said, just scroll over till you hit inventory, the INV left hand piece, preceded by the numbers. That's how you'll know you're at the end. Copy, and you can actually just literally paste. So we'll save. I'll show you why. So if we reload, you open our inventory. Well, Beardo, there's only one. If you can actually have stuff overlay. Obviously, I can't put it back on top of each other, but when the game loads, it doesn't seem to crash the game. In the future, it might. So just keep in mind my original method. I will put the exact dimensions or the numbers that you'll need to have it load in this top slot. And of course, I will also have a number of the inventory, copy and paste that you can go in and get basically all of it. So I'll include stuff like the Ranger Gambeson, the Cult Cloak, Elven Brigandine, things like that. So check for that in the description. Part 5, character transfer. So this is probably one of the most requested, and I know that I said that I would do an update on this shortly after Way Forward, so I apologize for the delay. But having tested this, I have good and bad news for y'all. The good news is that you can easily make your character playable in Way Forward with a couple of simple tweaks. So in this instance, we are looking at my Derwin1, which I had renamed to Derwin B-roll because I used him for the podcast and for various testing purposes. So first, you'll need to go into your character.save file, and you will scroll down until you find a variable called wipe version. Now, on your older characters, this might be 8, it might be lower if it is a much older character. This is one of the variables that you will need to change. So you will go, and you don't need quotes for this because it's not going to show up again. Just make sure you put in wipe space version. Go in, change this to 9, but that is not enough. The next spot, you will actually go back, go to character.map, and you will see this is also listed as 8. So you'll want to change this one as well. If you do not change both, this will not work, and Derwin will still show up as not being able to load, telling you, that you could load an old beta version. If we load now, you can see he is available. And now we have our old Derwin here, maxed out with all his cool equipment. The bad news about this is that you would not be able to run dungeons. Due to the way forward update, there were some drastic changes to how dungeons generate. And if you open your map, it will look like this. A crazy hot mess of points of interest. And if you go to these, or if you go to any of the dungeons, it'll basically crash out the game. Obviously, the map should not have this many points of interest. And because of all of the variables that were changed in the save file in regards to dungeons, you won't be able to run these. So, having said that, the good news obviously being that you can go and recover items. You can go and try to, if you followed part 4, you'll be able to go in and use this data to clone out items, go figure out where they are, put them in your inventory, maybe even save, and then recover them like I said. Now, there is one way in which you can carry on the legacy of your character, but it is essentially starting a new character and just copying and pasting portions of the save file over. So you can take this as far as doing a one-to-one change on all things. The main areas I would recommend being careful on when changing over are dungeons and locations. There's the possibility other portions of the save file will break as well. Quest should not. If you want to save that piece over, you can change, your stacks, your crowns, the journal quest complete, your journal quests in general. But you're basically just starting a new character with a new seed and just copying and pasting over. So at that point, when it gets to that point, it's essentially creating, just massively editing a new character and just cloning the best of what you had from the previous one. And like I said, there's many ways you can do this. You can follow my old guides and just give your character XP, copy over the inventory section. This is probably the one section that you guys or y'all would be most interested to carry over, is all the equipment that you've gotten. Other than that, yeah, I actually didn't even prepare a demo for this because of the amount of time it would take to copy and paste, back and forth, and test. So that's basically the bad news, is there's basically no way to just permanently recapture your old characters. I hope you enjoyed these save file editing changes in regards to the way forward update, as well as some new tricks that have always been available. Be sure to like and subscribe, as well as leaving a comment. if there is any specific pieces of equipment or any questions on the changes that I made. Remember, do not go to the developers as stated in the beginning of the video, and making any and all of these changes are done at your own risk. Using Notepad++, you can just Control Z to undo any changes you made, but just keep in mind that you can break the game, specifically any of your save file characters. This will likely be the last save file video for a while, unless subsequent updates introduce new elements or break the ones I've shown here. I'd like to thank my lovely patrons for supporting the channel. You can do the same by checking out the links in the description. Also, be sure to check out this video's sponsor in the description, Aries Games. They sell very good quality power supplies for very nice prices. So if you are looking to build out a new PC, be sure to check them out in the links in the description as well. I'm leaving a link to their store in Amazon as well as their main site. They are planning on expanding into more products in the future, so be sure to show them some love. And if you leave them a review on Amazon, be sure to tell them that Beardo sent you. Until next time, peace.